Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Brian. Today we're going to be working on our 2008 VW GTI. It has a noise in the front end which sounds suspiciously like a bad CV joint, an outer one. So let's get it put up in the air and see if we can figure out which side it is. I think it's the right, but we'll see if we can notice or determine any play in it. One thing about this car that makes it kind of a pain to use this lift for, all this plastic under tray, it's hard to get to a solid point to lift it. So I don't think we're sitting on it, I think it's just touching it. Not sure how well this is going to show up. I don't know where all this oil's coming from either, so I guess that's something else we'll have to look into at some point. This boot's not blown off, although that tie rod end's bad. Dang it. The boot's bad on that, so we'll have to look into that too. We have this much free play, kind of, it's hard to tell, hard to see, but you can look here at the CV boot and the joint. You can see the boot turn before the axle shaft does. So there's that much free play in this thing. And this is where the noise is coming from, so we'll go after this one. See if this shows up any better. So if you look right down here, probably still can't see it. Either the splines on the axle are worn or the CV's worn, because there's that much backlash in it, and it's pretty noisy. This axle bolts at 27. We could break that ball joint loose with that taper and take that nut off. But in this instance, I'm just going to unbolt the ball joint and leave it attached to the steering knuckle. And that appears to be a 16. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the sway bar link. I'm pretty sure I'll be fighting that, trying to drop this knuckle down to get that axle out. This is an 18. Oh, and she's tight. I know this isn't the right thing to do, but my options are limited right now. So that thing's spinning in there. There's a hex inside there, so we're going to have to hold this nut and turn the hex out. At least I'm guessing it's a hex. Or a triple square. Lovely. This is a 6mm triple square. Now with any luck, we can use a pry bar, get this ball joint separated. Yeah. Now let's see if the axle is stuck in the knuckle. That can happen too. Which it appeers to be. We'll put this back in here. Give that a few love taps to free it up. Alright, there, it's broken free now. But way up in there at the transmission, we need to get all those bolts out, and those I know are triple squares. I'm not good at guessing those sizes. That is a 10 triple square, and this is my longest extension, which is almost too short. And then you need to hold the axle or the rotor or something as well to keep it from spinning. If I had a helper, I'd just get them to push on the brake pedal. I'll stick a screwdriver down here in the brake rotor and see if that'll hold it. In this instance, it might be even easier just to do it from under the car. You have pretty good access on this side. All those bolts are out on the inside. This thing should just pull out of here. Come on. And there she is. Now that's up here in the vise, you can hear and see that play. So let's open this thing up. Normally I can just cut through these things. All right, you want to be that way? There's another option. Now for the fun part. So I beat and banged on this thing for like 15 minutes and it is not coming off there. And I'm starting to wonder if the wear is actually in the splines on the axle and not the CV joint, because the inner part of the CV joint doesn't appear to have any play in it. The play appears to be between the inner part and the axle. So I cut my losses and was able to find a whole axle shaft locally. Let's hope it's right. Has bolts. Has grease too, which is odd. So joint's already assembled and there's no play in it. I'm guessing on this end we'll need to pop this cover off and put that grease in there. Let me check on that. So I popped that zip tie off there, and that is not full of grease. I'm not sure why they wouldn't fill it up, but it came with a packet, so we'll cut that open and get all that squeezed in there. I'm out of gloves too, so this is going to be messy. It came with new bolts, but I'm going to go ahead and reuse the old original ones, just so it'll be, because it looks like the new ones are hex, so it'll be the OE style triple squares. All right, here goes. Go ahead and pull this cap out of here before I get too far. There we go. Also comes with the new outer bolt, which I will reuse. Well, I will not reuse. I'll put the new one in there, because more than likely this is a torque to yield bolt, so once you torque it once, it's used up and you need to replace it, because when you torque it, it stretches. I'll just run that down to hold that in for now, and then we'll go in there and put all those bolts in the inner. So what I've found online is looks like the torque spec for these is 30 foot-pounds. Of course, I'm going to have to jam the screwdriver out here in the rotor to hold it. And probably get all in their way. Should be able to get this ball joint popping back in now. Now for the sway bar link. We'll final torque this when the car's on the ground, but for right now I'm going to run this down a little bit. You need to pop the center cap out of the wheel now. Now with the car back on the ground, the torque spec is 150 or 148 foot-pounds, which I think is 200 Newton meters. And then, now we'll verify that. It might have been a little tight. And then 180 degrees. Whew. Now we can torque the wheels. Wheel torque's what, 90? I'm gonna do it. So the driver was itching to go somewhere. So there at the end, we kind of got the car out and never really got to do a conclusion. But as I put the video together, notice it may not have made some sense, but I had actually purchased a new CV joint kit. It has a boot, clamps, grease, all that stuff in the box because I figured the CV joint was bad. The splines I was referring to, I don't know if that'll show up. Oh, hell, I own it now. The splines are inside that joint, and there are matching splines on the axle. On the end of the splines on the axle is a spring clip, looks like this, cut in the splines. So that is what holds that joint from coming off the outside of the axle. So that's why I was beating the hell out of it trying to get it off there. Usually you can pop those off. I've actually popped them off without ever taking the axle out of the car. Just get it out of the knuckle and you can knock it off and change the boot without having to take the axle out. But in this case, apparently those splines had gotten twisted on the axle and made a burr where that thing was probably never coming off. I'm not a big fan of using parts store axles like that because those inner CV joints, they never go bad. I don't think I've ever seen one bad. And all these now come with a new bolt because they torque to yield, as I talked about, which is important to torque because that sets the preload in your wheel bearing. And also I feel it's important to torque the inner 6 bolts around the inner flange because it seems like if you don't torque them to the right spec, they come loose. If you get them too tight, they come loose. I don't know. I've experienced that on a lot of older A1 and A2 cars. So anyway, thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.